Now, in response to lots of feedback and requests from many of you, we've come up with, and what I'd like to offer you here is a series of quite a lot of little videos showing you how our favorite techniques for using this really unique gadget that I have fallen in love with many years ago, produced by Locker Room in Australia, and you can buy truckloads of these on the Rehab Trainer website through Club Rehab specifically if you're a member. But this Posture Pro is versatile, it's basically indestructible and light, easy to carry. It also offers so much more specificity for getting in and breaking up tight areas in your body. It's more effective than the foam roller. Okay, it is a little more intense often to use, but you can also modulate how intense you go. You don't have to make it like a torture session every time. You can do it light or you can do it heavy. You can roll or you can do trigger point release. So there's so much options here with this one. So let's begin our little series of Posture Pro selfies for your own myofascial release. Okay, so you definitely could even have a group of clients learning some of the simple ones. In fact, all of them are pretty simple. Learning how to use them and having a little kind of movement prep or movement recovery kind of sessions as an alternative to foam roller. I'm really excited to see how you embrace the different selfies I'm about to show you. So these are some of our favorites. So our first area, starting basically at the foot and working our way up to the neck, is the plantar fascia. Posture Pro in standing or in kneeling like this, working through from the edge of the heel right up into, and note that it's kind of a little more expanded out this side, so that helps to reinforce the arch. Get that knee to come forward as a movement or just get that rolling happening. The calf. Okay. Starting with just a light self-rolling or trigger point technique, a little bit of movement of the foot. Progressing to a little bit of extra load. Working the full length of the calf, again adding that dorsiflexion, and thirdly, lifting the hips as tolerated. Obviously that's a lot more intense. Getting into those deep, tight spots in your calf. From the back near the Achilles, again, use that foot movement for extra benefit. Right up to, carefully right up on the big muscle belly, getting that calf loosened up. Lateral shin, common area for all kinds of foot problems, common area for tightness. So we place that Posture Pro in here, and we are working through that lateral shin. Only thing to be wary of here is higher up you have that bone on the side of your knee called the head of the fibula. So watch you don't rub on that because there's a few nerves around that area. Keep it in the soft muscle area in the middle of your shin there. Hamstring. And what I like to do, because it's not so prominent, it's a little bit harder to get into your hamstring. I actually like tucking up my other leg. That sort of helps my pelvis to come a little further forward into anterior tilt. And then you'll feel more of that myofascial release as you lean forward and roll through your hamstring. Okay, even if you find a tight spot there, move forwards and backwards, getting that deeper soft tissue release through your hamstring. The lateral quadriceps are a common area of tightness that is involved with knee pain, so let's get in and release the lateral quadriceps. Pressure here, and then lift if you choose, or you can just keep your hips down and just work that smaller area. Even just sinking in with deep tissue pressure into the trigger points of the vastus lateralis, that'll really help that ITB loosen. Be surprised how tender some of these spots are. Keep the pressure here and use a little bit of hip lift to get nice and deep into that lateral quad. Keep rolling up, maybe tight, getting closer up to the hip, but we're not going to roll onto the actual greater trochanter. We're going to stay in the muscle belly of the quads, vastus lateralis. To increase our stretch, so it's not so deep, but it's more fascial, we will straighten the leg and get the other one a little bit up like that. And from this position, we'll also be moving into a slightly more face down position, maybe hard for you to see, other knee up, and just working through that quad, rolling through. Next area is the hip flexor, the TFL. Easiest way to get into the TFL, onto the side and use half of your posture pro, leaning forward a little bit, and then working through that tightness near as if where your front pocket is. If you're going to put your hand in your front pocket, right in there is that tender lump, tender muscle tissue, often very tight, called the TFL. Not a big area, so only a small movement is needed. And just sink into that. Sink into it, relax your hip, and let that deep tension come out of the TFL. Glute. The glute will include piriformis, gluteus maximus, and even trigger points in gluteus medius. All that tightness can cause problems south and north of that area. So basically, if that's your hip bone, we're just going above that area and sinking into here, not below. It's not as if you're sitting on it. You're going to be higher up here. There we go. So that leg just nice and free there in space. Sinking into that deep tightness behind that greater trochanter and below that edge of your pelvis. Get those deep trigger points released. Some of them can be exquisitely tender and may even actually refer a bit of pain, often down the back of your leg, and that's just an active trigger point. Moving into the lower back, we've got a couple of areas to consider. Commonly, the big muscle in the over where your kidneys are is called quadratus lumborum. So quadratus lumborum, or QL, is best targeted. Again, putting this posture pro kind of into your kidney area, rolling back onto it, support on your elbows, and then cross that leg over. That really opens up that QL. Now, you'll feel you're on those dimples called the PSIS, or where your sacroiliac joint is. So try and stay just above that dimple in, off center there in your lower back. And you should find some really tender spots in that kidney area, and that is called your QL. Common cause of chronic lower back pain. It's just chronic trigger points in the QL, and mine's tender. Second area to consider in the lower back is right in the center. So this posture pro that is quite perfectly formed for loosening of your spine, put it right in the middle, nice and low, and then in this supported position or fully flat, you can gently tuck your tail under and get that deep kind of release work going into the lower lumbar spine area. So hunt around for those tight spots, let your pelvis sink down to get a bit of a stretch. You're kind of being forced into a lordosis, or tuck your tummy in and try to posterior tilt and then roll, and that's more like a muscle release. All right, so just gonna get that movement or sink in and let the stretch happen. A little bit higher up into that middle or a little bit upper lumbar spine, so we're at about this level here. One other little element, if you're feeling it's not very strong, you can add a bit of kind of hip and knee flexion and use that as a lever. So if you then pull on that, that forces more pressure onto the posture pro and makes it a more aggressive technique. Thoracic spine. Now the thoracic spine is in fact what the posture pro is designed for. That's the original purpose. We've just expanded all these other different purposes for it, but its original purpose is for the thoracic spine. So this is how we do self-myofascial release or mobility stretching for thoracic. First area is right in the middle of your spine. Kind of, let's say if you're a girl, where your bra strap is, somewhere in there. And we're just gently going to lie down and see how it feels. Keep your knees up, just to sink your spine over that posture pro sitting in the middle there. And then we're just deep breathing, trying to relax, let it do its work. You know, gravity at the moment is stretching you, kind of flexing you over this posture pro. Go level by level. Feel how those different levels are. If one level is really intense, there's a couple of ways you can kind of just reduce that intensity a bit. One is simply to straighten out your legs. That'll often make it a little bit easier to tolerate, and you can build up to the knees up a bit later. Or the other option is to, in fact, have a pillow under your head. That also will take a little bit of pressure off the thoracic spine. So as long as, especially with clients who are 50 or maybe 55, 60 and older, make sure they can keep breathing. And then the pain is not so intense that they can't have a conversation with you. Okay? Now I'll just free my shirt, and then we're going to let that posture pro go a little bit higher up now towards, again, a very commonly stiff area called the upper or mid-thoracic spine. I'll just get it untangled from my shirt. See if it's going to stay there. Yeah. So now it's up closer to between my shoulder blades. In that space, we probably will need to do some lifting of hips to try and get that bit of pressure, but also we're going to add in the head support with the hands. So we're linking the fingers and keeping the hands there. Lift the hips a little, and then slowly you'll find that intensity of that begins to reduce as the stretching happens. So you are mobilizing your upper thoracic spine with a bit of head lift and a bit of hips lift. Very, very effective for getting into a really difficult area to get loose. Cervical spine or neck. Okay, so we're now going to be working from the base of your occiput, right on that edge of your skull, down through your neck, and maybe a little bit into that upper trap, very, very upper thoracic area. Let's start here. Key here, once you've got it in that position, is just to keep that chin a bit tucked in. That opens your neck and makes this a safe, unstressful myofascial release process. Just rolling. Brilliant for headaches, of course, neck pain, all those kinds of things. Just rolling, one side a little bit more, other side depending upon how you feel. A little bit lower through the neck. Might even want to support your head a little bit if you're going a bit lower, just to get that neck softened up. All right, if we are a little bit just at the very base of the neck, we might even add in a bit of arm movement here. Keep your head rested on the ground, and just let those arms come up to the full extent, and rolling up and down, you'll feel those upper traps, those levator scapulae, those rhomboids get a bit of a good deep dig, and that should feel fantastic after. I could really feel that getting into those areas. So the key there being head resting and arms fully elevated to get your upper trap. Deep tissue release. One other little element, if you want to try this, if you're struggling to get to some of those trigger points up in the base of your skull, is to put your posture pro on an edge and then just use the edge a little bit like that. So you can kind of use the edge as a digging tool, support your head, and then just get in a little bit more specifically underneath the edge of your skull. Just be careful to begin, because some of these spots are so tender if you get headaches and neck pain regularly. Take your time, breathe through it. Don't be too aggressive to begin with. Just check that everything feels good as you're doing this, you know. Pec. Now, remember, pec is not one muscle, it's two, pec minor and pec major. So let's see if I can separate out the two. The most important ingredient probably is where your arm is positioned as to how deep you go. All right? If we want to do the pec minor, we're going to be using the posture pro on an end like that. And then this posture pro will sort of sink into that front part of your chest. And we're going to be down in this position here. Arm goes down by your side. So if you can see that there, that is effectively pushing my shoulder backwards, okay? Other hand in a push-up, other leg lifted, and that there is a very strong release technique for the pec minor. If we want, feeling brave, add a little bit of a whole body rotation to really wind up that myofascial release. Whole body rotation. Oh yeah. Okay, and so the only difference here, if we're going to do pec major, is to place that in a rolling scenario and your arm up into that, we call it the stop sign position. All right, make sure it's right on the front of your pec major there, where your big tendon is. Okay, and we're doing same thing with the hand and the leg, rolling, and even adding the big body rotation movement. It's so good for really opening up that chest. Don't be scared of some discomfort there. If you've been doing a lot of push-ups, a lot of bench press, your pec will be grumpy, guaranteed. Rotator cuff, common area of tightness that leads to shoulder impingement and pain inside. So the area we're targeting here is that posterior shoulder area, posterior deltoid infraspinatus teres minor. So we're going to be down on the floor with that in there. Okay. Hand here, maybe support that hand, and then just working through that tightness. Breaking through that tightness. Very uncomfortable in certain spots. Could be posterior deltoid, could be that infraspinatus. You could add a bit of rotation. If it's very much those rotators that are tight, rotate inwards. And even down onto that teres minor, he can be pretty horrible. Lat dorsi, all right, classic muscle for being tight and restricting overhead press. Lat dorsi, of course, is on this lateral side of the scapula and lateral part of the trunk. Let's get into position. Support your head in your hands. And there it is, body weight into it. Oh, you'll feel that teres major. He's often very grumpy if you've been doing lots of chin-ups, lots of kipping. Right down onto lats on the actual side of your ribs. Don't recommend you go too much deeper than here. Stay up close to that shoulder blade, but that is where all the tightness will accumulate as that muscle comes together and becomes a big fat tendon and runs up into your armpit. So lat dorsi myofascial release, just intense. Now if you want to make that even a bit stronger, straighten out your arm and then just do a bit of arm lifting. Oh, that's tender. Arm lifting as you've got the pressure on your lat there. That is worth its weight in gold, but not very pleasant. Be surprised how loose you'll feel after you've done that. The forearm, as it relates to elbow problems and also to wrist problems. Classic areas we need to release are the brachioradialis and the whole kind of flexor area, but specifically that pronator teres. So, down on the floor, it's going to be a case of a little bit up. Oh, there we go. Getting that brachioradialis released. You can even just add a bit of that wrist movement to really open up. Just check we're getting enough of that brachioradialis there, yes. Lateral tennis elbow, that kind of stuff will really feel good for a while after you've done a bit of this myofascial release. Cross the elbow a little bit there. Okay. And then we have this forearm area. So we're just going to get in and myofascial release through the forearm.